We have a substitute for Susan who asked to be substituted out. We have Hamza Khan and you're gonna have to tell me your name.
I am Safa Ahmed.
Oh, sure. Can you record?
So right now, and what organization you're with, if you are with an organization, and then we'll begin.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Safa Ahmed, and I am the Associate Media Director of the Indian American Muslim Council, which is the largest and oldest advocacy organization in the diaspora focused on addressing Hindutva or Hindu nationalism.
My name is Hamza Khan, and I am a proud resident of Montgomery County, Maryland.
How's everyone doing? My name is Robert Stubblefield. I am a lay minister and theologian. I am also a member of No Hindutva Maryland, a variety of other organizations.
All right. So I guess I'm going first, and my goal here tonight is to give you guys a very thorough overview of what Hindutva is. I hope you'll be able to walk away knowing how to define Hindutva and also knowing how to recognize its impacts in the United States. But in order to do that, I do need to talk a little bit about India, and I do need to get a little bit into terminology. So I'll start by actually telling you two stories that kind of illustrate what Hindutva does to human beings. And both of these stories are coming out of India. They're both extremely recent. Actually, I just want to check, how many of you celebrate Christmas? Okay, cool. So this would be important for y'all to know. In India, just a couple weeks ago during the Christmas season, a video went viral of a man walking down the street holding a staff. This man is a self-professed member of the Bajrang Dal. That is one of the largest religious militant groups in all of India. It is a Hindu militant group. And he's filming himself walking down the street saying to the camera, along with the staff of the Bajrang Dal, I carry 4 nails and a hammer. If anyone wishes me Merry Christmas, I will kill him in the name of Jesus Christ. Remember that. The other story I want to share with you is that just a week or two ago, a video was posted by India's Hindu nationalist ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, which I will refer to as the BJP. And this was the wing of the BJP that rules in the North Indian state of Assam, which is home to more than 12 million Muslims. The chief minister of the state of Assam posted a video of himself shooting a rifle at AI-generated images of Muslim men. The clip was titled Point Blank Shot and included the text, No Mercy. And this video came out just a few weeks after Sharma told Hindus to enact economic apartheid against the Muslims in his own constituency. So this gives you an idea of what is the human cost of Hindutva, but what is it exactly as a political concept? Basically, Hindutva is a political ideology separate from the religion of Hinduism, entirely distinct from the religion of Hinduism, that believes that Hindus, especially upper caste Hindus, are by default superior over non-Hindus. They take this ideology, a lot of inspiration for this ideology is derived actually from the World War II era European fascist movements. So think Nazism, think Mussolini's fascism. And so Hindutva was sort of conceived in this point in time in history where you have a lot of global ethno-fascism on the rise. And so, like with Nazism and other forms of fascism, Hindutva believes that minorities, and specifically in the context of India, Muslims and Christians, should be stripped of their human rights, reduced to second-class citizens, subjected to mass violence, and also that India should not be the world's largest democracy, a secular democracy as it has been since its inception, but a Hindu theocratic ethno-state, which, by the way, is shocking for the world's largest democracy currently. So where does Hindutva come from? I'm not going to get too into the details, but like one thing that you should know is that the guy who first articulated Hindutva is a guy called V.D. Savarkar. In it, this man refers to Islam as an alien adulteration in India, and asserts that Muslims and Christians are incapable of showing loyalty to India. And based on this ideology, the Hindu militant group Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, or the RSS, was founded 2 years later in 1925. I know I'm throwing a lot of acronyms at you, but what you need to know basically is the RSS is the largest militant group, I believe, in the world, and it certainly is in India. And this group, if you Google pictures of the RSS in India, you will see men in khaki shorts marching in a manner that is very reminiscent of the Nazis in Germany, and it happens day to day in India. Why am I mentioning the RSS? It is because the ruling party of India currently is the political wing of the RSS. And so this guy who articulated Hindutva, because I know I want to also take a moment to honor the work of Save America from Hindutva. It is often thought that this ideology only impacts India. And I do want to make it clear that there are plenty of people in the United States who say that Hindutva and Hinduism cannot be separated, that Hindutva is a form of protection for Hindus. And I want to tell you guys right here and right now a quote from Sarvarkar, the guy who articulated the concept first. He actually said in a speech, "Who are we to dictate to Germany, Japan, or Russia, or Italy to choose a particular form of policy of government? Hitler knows better what suits Germany best. The very fact that Germany or Italy has so wonderfully recovered and grown so powerful at the touch of Nazi or fascist magical wands is enough to prove that those isms were the most congenial tonic that their health demanded." In other words, this man was doing praise for the Holocaust. A couple of years later, M.S. Golwalkar, who was the second chief of the RSS, this militant group, he also says very clearly what Hindutva stands for. He says the foreign races in India, referring to Muslims and Christians specifically, must either adopt Hindu culture and language, must learn to respect, hold and reverence Hindu religion, must entertain no ideas, but those of glorification of the Hindu race and culture, minorities must be fully subordinated to the Hindu nation, claiming nothing, deserving no privileges, not even citizens' rights. So what does that look like in practice in India? Well, it takes the form of Muslims and Christians being targeted, basically being targeted with state-sponsored violence and also interpersonal violence amid calls for the ethnic cleansing and genocide of both those minority populations. So you will see Muslim-owned homes and shops being demolished in India on the regular. You will see Hindu supremacists in India trying to convert mosques into temples or otherwise destroying these mosques. You will see Muslims facing attacks on their right to citizenship, normalized calls for hate speech and genocide, mob lynchings frequently of Muslim men in the name of protecting cows, which are sacred in Hinduism, and bans of displays of the Muslim faith. One example being the banning of hijabs in many schools across India, and also bans on very simple phrases that are essential to the Muslim identity, like the phrase "I love Muhammad," which actually led to mass arrest in India against Muslims who were putting these words on placards or writing it outside of their homes or marching outside holding these signs. So basically, Muslim existence in India is criminalized at the very fundamental level. And I want to now, there's so much I could say about this. In addition, you can go to iamc.com to learn more about how Hindutva manifests in India. But now I really quickly want to talk about how Hindutva manifests in America. And also, please stop me if I'm going over time. I don't really know how much time I have, so I'm just going to keep talking until y'all stop me. How many more? 3? You made that up. Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to listen to Hamza. So Hindutva in America. So I talked to you about the RSS, right? So the RSS, you can think of it as this mothership of Hindu supremacy, basically globally. The RSS's operations and spread of its ideology of Hindutva is certainly not contained to India. In fact, it has been global for decades. In fact, the RSS, this militant group, which by the way, I mentioned, was founded by people who supported the literal Holocaust, has over 100 affiliated groups operating in the United States. This includes charities, cultural organizations, and civil rights organizations. There are also plenty of individuals who express support for these affiliated organizations and may even unwittingly be working with them, thinking that they are working with benign cultural organizations who support Hindu American life and culture and all that good stuff. These groups will very frequently invoke the language of anti-racism and social justice to mask their supremacist ideology. Actually, the Caravan magazine, which is a very very prominent magazine in India, recently released a map, a digital interactive map. If you all are interested, you should check it out. It is called Seeing the Sangh. That's SANGH. So Seeing the Sangh will basically give you this full database of all the Hindu supremacist groups that are operating in the United States with links to the RSS. And so these groups obviously are not acting violently that we know of in the United States, but they will frequently invoke the language of anti-racism and social justice to mask how supremacist they are and how much they have disdain for their fellow minorities within the Indian American diaspora, specifically Muslims and Christians, but also Sikhs and Dalits, also formerly known as untouchables. So you'll often see them framing Hindu supremacist policies and atrocities in India as quote unquote decolonization or quote protecting Indian Hindus. You'll see them also using bad faith accusations of quote unquote Hinduphobia to discredit specifically critics of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, whose party is the BJP, critics of the BJP as well, and also critics of Hindu supremacist ideology. You'll also see them supporting BJP policies that target and disenfranchise minorities. For example, laws that actually criminalize conversion away from Hinduism to Christianity and Islam specifically. And you'll see a lot of support from American Hindu nationalist groups saying that these laws are actually not an infringement on religious freedom, as they very well are, because they're very often used to attack, or very often weaponized as a grounds to attack Christian congregations, or also specifically Muslim men who happen to be in interfaith relationships. And also similarly, you'll see them expressing support for discriminatory laws that aim to strip Muslims of their citizenship en masse and render them stateless in the millions. One really important thing to keep an eye out for is the fact that they also celebrate anti-minority symbols quite often that are used by the BJP in India and also widely recognized to be Hindu supremacist symbols. One key example is the flaunting of bulldozers and specific other symbolism that has been included in, for example, Indian Independence Day parades. In fact, in New Jersey in 2022, there was a very prominent example of a bulldozer decorated with the picture of Prime Minister Narendra Modi being paraded down a street in New Jersey in a town that had a lot of Muslims in it at an Indian Independence Day parade, which people were shocked by it then. There was very sharp criticism of it then, but unfortunately, these groups have only gotten more bold in the years since. Several of these groups, like the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, is the American wing of another major militant group with a very long VHPA. You might have heard of them. They have chapters basically everywhere in every major city. But these groups have a very well-documented history of working as proxies to the Indian government, in the sense that they will literally collaborate with the Indian embassy to either display hate symbols or to harass minorities. And I'm just going to list off some examples to close us off. These are just like a blanket list of activities that Hindu supremacist groups in the United States have basically worked on. So the first being protesting and lobbying against civil rights protections for marginalized communities, especially those who are impacted by caste-based discrimination in places like Silicon Valley. And the prominent example of that is, Hamza just said, okay, I wasn't joking about the time. Thanks, Hamza. So California's SB 403 was met with sharp resistance from Hindu supremacists in California, to the point where this bill to protect people from caste-based discrimination, one of the oldest forms of discrimination known to humanity, was vetoed by Governor Gavin Newsom. These groups have sued civil rights departments, universities, and other entities over similar moves to protect caste-oppressed people. A lot of this happened in the year 2022. You'll see them engaging in slap lawsuits against academics, journalists, activists, and even governmental agencies. Plenty of targeted harassment campaigns, including threats of death and sexual assault against their critics, displaying hate symbols in public, as I mentioned, getting local elected officials to sign off on proclamations surrounding yoga and maybe peace coming from groups like the VHPA, which will then turn around and celebrate atrocities against minorities in India. And last but not least, attempts to shoehorn Hindu supremacist retelling of Indian history into public school textbooks and in general into the education system in this country. I've spoken a lot right now, and Hamza's dying for me to give him the mic. So I was to give Rob the mic. I'm so sorry. In that case, I'm very happy to give Rob the mic. But if you have any questions, I will be here. Feel free to talk to me.
You know, there's a lot of things that, Sister Safa touched on that I was going to, but um, I want to talk about a little bit how I became aware of what Hindutva was and how it affects communities, marginalized communities here in the United States. So I first became aware of Hindutva around 2017. To provide context, I'm also part of a group called the Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition. And we had just started our fight to stop the desecration of a historic African American cemetery in Bethesda. And some of our allies were some of these locally prominent Muslim civil rights leaders, but they were Indian Muslims and they were concerned with a lot of things going on in India at the time. And then they mentioned the term Hindutva, and I've never heard that term before. I basically asked one of them, is that a form of Hinduism? Is that an offshoot of Hinduism? And they basically said, just look it up. And so I looked it up and I saw, to Safa, just to piggyback what Safa said, the founder, V.D. Savarkar, he wrote in his book, What is Hindutva? Where he talked about it's a pretty much the creation of a Hindu ethno-state. One of the things that put me up in that book, and I found a copy of it online, was that there was an anti-blackness component to Hindutva. He said, and I quote, that he was very keen to show that the Hindus were not black. He said, we are like the Persians of ancient antiquity, we are pure. And says, you cannot compare the Siddhis to Hindus because Hindus are the true inheritors of India. And Siddhis are an ethnic group that can trace their ancestry to people who were taken from the eastern coast of Africa, the east coast of Africa. They all came as mercenaries, indentured servants, or enslaved. So right there for me, that was a concern right there because in addition to colorism in Hinduism, there's also the anti-blackness component. And so I was wondering about that context. To fast forward around 2020, when we were all in quasi lockdown with COVID, and we also were dealing with the summer of racial reckoning in 2020, we became aware that the planning board was moving forward with the permit for a private developer to desecrate part of Moses Cemetery. And we were trying to get a meeting with the person who was spearheading it. And we're trying to, why is he so gung-ho about moving forward with cemetery desecration, despite best efforts trying to meet? It wasn't until about a year later found out that he was a top fundraiser for groups like Overseas Friends of the BJP and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad America. And that to me was very telltale for it right there, because if you're raising funds for the desecration of cemeteries overseas, like in India, like it's not just Muslim cemeteries, it's also Christian cemeteries that are being desecrated. Then it doesn't come to as a surprise to me as to why you're so gung ho about Black cemetery desecration here in Montgomery County. And it's already affecting local politics. About a few years ago, just to like, me, Susan, I know Susan's trying to keep a low profile, but we were actually protesting the VHPA because they had gotten a permit to celebrate a holiday called Ram Janmabhoomi, which was the celebration on paper of the birthplace of Ram. But where the Ram celebration was taking place, it was taking place on the site of the desecrated Babri Masjid. And the VHPA has been documented, along with their mother chapter, the VHPA, by the CIA of all agencies to be a very violent far-right group. And we protested. We wrote to the county council, we wrote to the county executive saying, please don't let them host their event at Gaithersburg High School. We did not get a response.
Tag team on that battle?
Oh, yeah, sure. So let me just finish this one point. Let me finish this one point. And then when those of us from the interfaith angle, as I mentioned before, I'm also a lay minister and theologian. I'm also currently working on my stuff to become a reverend. But as a lay minister, we also wrote an interfaith letter saying, this was wrong to his interfaith coordinator. And the response was basically not only did they ignore us, but they issued a proclamation, and some of the members and the county executive included showed up despite the outcry from the community Muslim community in Gaithersburg. So if you can just go ahead and
Sorry to jump over Safa. Safa, I would never in my mind ever try to tell you to be quiet when you're on a roll. I learned more about Hindu nationalism in those 18 minutes than I have learned reading over 18 books about Hindu nationalism. So thank you for that. So before Josie goes, because I know she's raring to go and campaign, I want to tell you why this event that Rob just talked about is so important. The VHPA, which is what Safa talked about, has a chapter here in Montgomery County and in Maryland. And it's very active using county funds, as I understand it, as well as trying to get state funds to do good works in the community in terms of charitable acts, feeding the poor, medical clinics. There are a lot of South Asians who happen to be doctors, you might know. And on top of that, though, this is mostly done as a political cover in order for them. It's mostly done as a political cover in order for them to inculcate themselves in the local communities. This is a telltale strategy that's been used by American missionaries, for instance, when they go to foreign countries, do a lot of good clinic work. Hopefully people will join your faith. In this case, they don't want you to join their faith. They want to get you used to their political ideology. In Montgomery County, Maryland, this large event that happened, the word masjid that Rob used is the Arabic word for mosque. There is a mosque that was built by the Emperor Babur in India many years ago, 400 years ago, and it's been an argument whether or not it's been built on top of a Hindu temple, which is believed to be the birthplace of the Hindu Lord Ram. In 1992, against the order of the Indian Supreme Court, it was demolished by Hindu extremists. The current prime minister decided to inaugurate a huge temple on top of that site. The holiday being celebrated was a celebration of the destruction of the mosque, not of Ram's birth, but of the mosque. County Executive Mark Elrich, despite having over, I can tell you, from me, probably 15 messages, just to let you know, I said I'm a county resident, should probably honor that. I have been on the board of the Montgomery County Young Democrats, the Maryland Young Democrats. I was the outreach director for Congressman John Delaney in 2014. I was a field director for progressive candidate Beth Daly, who ran for county council at large in 2014. My first campaign in this county, I was an intern for Congressman Chris Van Hollen in 2004, and I have a long career of political activism. And I just finished a master's at Georgetown a couple months ago in democracy and governance. I throw that all in here to tell you what I'm about to say is so important. County Executive Mark Elrich was informed numerous times, and as I understand it from his religious interfaith liaison, was also given a memo warning him not to go to this event, but went to the event in question where they were celebrating the destruction of a 400-year-old mosque with over 50 protesters, 60 protesters, 65 protesters outside in the freezing cold in February, and gave a proclamation to a Hindu nationalist group, the VHPA, which you just heard Safa talk about, as being an extension of an organization that targets Safa and I for our religion, and Rob for the color of his skin and his religion as a Christian. Now, you also heard about the desecration of cemeteries in India. I want to add on to that. Not only are cemeteries being desecrated, they are actual 501c3 nonprofits, charitable organizations in the United States that are fundraising to do something called Ghar Wapsi. Ghar Wapsi in Hindi translates to return to the home. But you see, Hindi is a gendered language. Okay? When I am going home, I am main wapas ja raha hu. I'm going back to my home. That's in the masculine tense. When I say Ghar Wapsi, I'm taking a woman to the home. The connotation in Hindi, which might be lost on all of you, is that I'm taking a Christian woman home to rape her and put her in her place as a lower caste Hindu. Bring her back to the home. That is what our county executive was going to give a proclamation to. That is what our lieutenant governor, Aruna Miller, who, by the way, I was her closest neighbor for about 15 years. I lived on River Road. She lives on Berryville, not too far from me. She lives in Germantown. I was the last house in Potomac, Maryland. She had been to my house more than once for an iftar. I knew her personally. We were on the cell phone many times. That is what the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland actively supports when she takes a single dollar from Hindu nationalist donors. This is a point of contention with the lieutenant governor. She particularly believes that I have been after her for this. She's right. You shouldn't take money from Hindu nationalists. I'm sorry to steal your time, brother. You shouldn't take money from Hindu nationalists. And the reason for that isn't because anyone in this room hates Hindus. My first girlfriend, it's Ramadan, was a Hindu. I have no problem with people who are Hindus. I'm very comfortable with Hinduism. I don't believe in partition. My family's from Pakistan. I think the idea of separating our two countries is a horrible idea. But I will not compromise on the idea that a Hindu's life and a Muslim's life and a Christian's life and an atheist's life are equal to each other. And neither should someone who's running for Congress in the 6th district or serving as lieutenant governor of the 3rd most diverse state in the country, with 450,000 documented Muslims living here, one of the largest Muslim populations in the country. It's also apparently the largest Pakistani population, which explains why we don't have good Indian food. But that being said, we can solve that by talking about this problem. You see, I have spent a lot of time. I've never spoken on this issue in a panel. I've never wanted to. I recognize that my parents being from Lahore, Pakistan is a complication because Pakistan has a very divisive, hateful record of sponsoring Muslim nationalism to kill Hindus in Kashmir, in Bengal, Bangladesh today. Over 1 million people were killed in partition because of Pakistani nationalism, the decision that Muslims were better. If you don't know, the word Pakistan in Persian and Urdu, which is also Hindi, translates to the land of the celestially pure, which implies that the people next door are unclean and impure, right? It's not a very nice way of talking about your neighbor. So you can see how this might be complicating for me. But I'm an American, and I've been a Democrat since I was 17. I became a Democrat on May 16th, 2005, before I was even old enough to vote. That's when I registered at 17 years old. And it makes me more angry than I can tell you as someone who has served on so many different capacities in Maryland politics. I've worked on the Central Committee, 7 different Democratic galas I've been on the board for to raise money for our party. 7 different times. To have a lieutenant governor who lies about taking money from Hindu nationalists. She is one of the top recipients in past years. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's one of the top recipients in past years. Articles in the Huffington Post about her being a Hindu nationalist. Salon, Slate, The Intercept wrote about how her 2 top donors are MAGA, the guy who founded Muslims for Trump, Hindus for Trump, and both of them very pro-Modi, pro-Hindu nationalist. This ties back into Maryland politics in so many ways, and it's troublesome, especially in a county which is 10% Muslim. Over 100,000 Muslims live in this county. Not to mention Hindus of lower caste, Indian Christians. We have countless Indian Orthodox churches in this county, as well as Pentecostal Indian churches. The point I try to make to you all here tonight is that when we talk about Hindu nationalism, you got literally the Wikipedia Encyclopedia Britannica version summarized by Safa. She's literally a genius about this. But I want you to care about it, not because this is something far away. This is something happening in Montgomery County right now. The people trying to destroy a cemetery, a Black historical cemetery, Hindu nationalists. Go figure. Folks who are working to fund candidates who are not Muslim in this county. Montgomery County hasn't elected a practicing Muslim to office, elected since 2006. That's not on accident. The growing clout of this foreign movement and its commitment to keeping Muslims and Indian Christians out of politics in this country is terrifying. Ro Khanna, the progressive leader from California, the congressman, has condemned Hindu nationalism. The congresswoman from Washington State, whose sister is mayor of Portland, Pramila Jayapal, fellow Hoya like me, condemned Hindu nationalism numerous times, as is her sister, who is a council member in Portland, and Shama Swant, the brilliant leader from Seattle, DSA leader from Seattle, condemned Hindu nationalism. This is not, and all 3 of them come from Hindu families. It's not a Hindu problem. I should also point out, it's not an Indian problem. The Lieutenant Governor of Virginia Ghazala Hashmi is from the same state of India as our Lieutenant Governor, Hyderabad, Telangana. She condemns Hindu nationalism. The mayor of New York City, boy, does he go after Hindu nationalism. Both of them are Democrats. Why is my lieutenant governor hiding in the corners? Why did our lieutenant governor go to the White House under President Biden to celebrate Modi, the Hindu nationalist prime minister coming to the US? Why did she call Modi a rock star in 2014? And why are there so many news articles about her ties to Hindu nationalism? At a certain point, you have to start asking, what the hell is going on here? Okay? If you care about Maryland politics, this should be your number 2 issue. Because unless my rights are safe, no one's rights are safe. You want to know what the Hindu nationalist policy is on LGBTQ rights in India? I can tell you right now, it's a lot worse than the Taliban. Okay? Take that into consideration. With that, I'm going to give it back to Rob because I stole his time. I yield to the floor.
Thank you, Hamza. And I just wanted to, piggyback a little bit of something you said as well, because I remember when we were protesting at the Modi Not Welcome rally in June of 2023, and all over social media, all these leading figures were getting like the red carpet treatment. Aruna Miller tweeted like, it was a great honor meeting Prime Minister Modi and all the good things he's doing for India. And when someone confronted her about that, she tried to backtrack and say, well, I'm not a fan of his social reforms, but I really love his economic reforms. And me being the troll that I am from time to time, that's like saying you hate Hitler for the Holocaust, but love him for the Autobahn, you know? But basically, like a little joking aside, as my grandfather would say, I'll tell a joke, but not a lie. To continue on, like, Hindutva and its effect on African American communities, in addition to the desecration of Moses Cemetery, I want to point to our neighbors in Prince George's County and to provide context. Prince George's County was the wealthiest Black county in the entire country. They still have not recovered from the foreclosure crisis back in the Great Recession of 2008. And this was about, so 2000. So here we are in 2026, and Black community in Prince George's County is still suffering. There's been an increase in a lot of foreclosures and evictions. And the leading company that is responsible for like these increased foreclosures, especially in the more heavy African American areas, like within the Beltway, Prince George's County, is a company called SPS. The man who runs it, I don't know how to pronounce his name, and I'm not going to butcher it because I just don't believe in disrespecting people's names like that. He himself has had ties and raised money for some of these charities, like the Indian Cultural Association, which is another Hindutva-backed organization. He has also raised money for Overseas Friends of the BJP. And what's really heartbreaking to me about that is you are taking money out of the Black community and you're sending it overseas to these charities and organizations that are going after, the marginalized communities in India, the Dalits, Dalit Muslims, Dalit Christians, Siddhis, Sikhs, even Hindus who speak out against Hindutva. You're sending money to basically silence them. And that to me is very problematic here, because for a community that is already dealing with combating white supremacy and Christian nationalism, now we have to deal with this other form of religious nationalism, which to me is just as bad, if not worse. And I say that because, especially for those of us in the Black community, even those who say they're allies of the Black community, there needs to be not only better education, better awareness on this issue, but there's got to be better organizing and condemning this attitude when we see it. Now, I know like I want to open up with some questions, but I just want to end with this. One of my heroes is Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. He said this pretty plainly. It's not that we're outnumbered, we're out-organized. There's more of us than they are of these fascists. I want to repeat that. There is more of us than there are of these fascists, and I'm going to include their sycophants, those Uncle Tom, Aunt Jemima shuck and jiving folks, who will kowtow and defend these establishment fascist figures. They need to be thrown into that pile as well. And I'm saying if you love justice, if you love religious freedom, if you love democracy, let us really come together and remind these fascists know that they are hated by people of all colors and creeds. So with that, I want to open the floor for questions.
And before we do, wanted to share what happened to two comrades earlier today.
So first of all, there's a couple articles here, including one that Robert just did about African Americans and the Hindutva. But this morning, there was a session with President Trump's peace, which is really how they're going to carve up Gaza. And we had several people who were down there demonstrating. One was Hassan, who is the co-chair with Kat for our revolution, and the other is Cole Breelove. Both of them have been arrested, and it wasn't just a post and forfeit where they're let go. They're going to be there overnight. They're going to be a hearing at 1 o'clock in the Superior Court thing. And Cole was actually roughed up. I mean, she was knocked down, and you can see that. I think Hazami has it on her Instagram. So if there's anybody who can go down there at 1 o'clock, Samir, were you going to go? Maybe, yeah. So we just wanted to say that, and that's why Hassan isn't here today. So.
Oh, and before, Kat, I just want to give a special shout out to Sister Sarita, with Saving America from Hindutva. Thank you so much, for the work you do. Thank you.
I just want to say that I am a Hindu and I feel
She's on my first row.
I'm a Hindu. No, I think he came too late to the universal. I'm older, meaning. So I'm a Hindu by faith, and I feel it's especially important for me to talk about Hindutva and clarify the distinction between Hinduism, which is all about pluralism. It's all about everybody coming together, and Hindutva, a political hate ideology. And I'm not gonna let anybody snatch my faith and just use it for their own political ambitions, hateful ambitions.
I guess we're going to close because we're supposed to be out of here at 8. And I can see they're probably waiting for us to clean up. We're sorry we lost video for the last 10 minutes. Technical difficulties, but you can still hear it. We will be recording this. It is going to be posted on YouTube. I will send out an email to everyone who signed up for our emails. And I want to thank everyone who was on the panel. I want to
Go to imc.com, imc.org.
Yes, and thank our co-sponsors, IAMC and Save America Hindutva. Thank you so much.
We have Deborah Samosas